What if your name is already being whispered in rooms you've never entered, by people you've never met, because heaven marked you before the world could label you? And what if the reason you felt both hidden and hunted is because top world leaders, cultural architects, and unseen realms are watching the oil you carry, while you still question if you even matter? When God gets ready to elevate you, He doesn't ask for permission from your past. He just starts moving in your future. Chosen one, this isn't a coincidence. This is a divine collision. You didn't stumble on this video, this message, this moment. Heaven summoned you. You were called here through invisible strings that tugged at your spirit long before your mind could comprehend. And if something inside you feels strangely alert right now, it's because the atmosphere around your life has shifted. There is a spiritual surveillance surrounding you. Something is watching, something is moving, and what's coming has everything to do with what's been hidden inside you all along. Listen closely. World leaders, political giants, cultural architects, spiritual gatekeepers are not just observing the surface of society. They are being drawn, knowingly or not, to the frequency of your calling. Your name is being whispered in sacred places, on global stages, in private boardrooms, and heavenly realms alike. Why? Because of the oil you carry, because of the truth you embody, because of the divine legacy etched into your spirit before time itself began. And yet, you're still healing, still hidden, still wondering if your story matters. But beloved, the war isn't coming. It's already here, and the battlefield is your destiny. You are the territory. You are the strategy. You are the inheritance worth contending for. Before we unpack this message across 7 revelatory chapters that will shift your spiritual discernment and unlock what's being set in motion on your behalf, pause, like, share, comment 777 right now if your spirit is already stirring. Because 777 isn't just a number, it's a prophetic code of divine completion and holy perfection. It's how heaven signals, watch this one closely. To every single soul who has supported this ministry through Super Thanks, from the deepest place in my heart, thank you. You're not just giving, you're aligning. You're not just sowing, you're activating eternal architecture. Heaven has recorded your name, and blessings are already moving toward you like tides responding to the moon. And if you're still here, if something inside you won't let you click away, it's because this isn't information. This is confirmation, a spiritual download, a transmission encoded in light, truth, and fire. So now, let me show you why the enemy is nervous, why the systems are trembling, why nations are shifting. You are being prepared for more than a platform. You're being positioned for dominion. Let's go in. God's chosen ones, top world leaders are fighting over you, and you don't even know it yet. Chapter 1. Heaven has briefed the earth about you. You've been moving through the corridors of life like a silent architect, laying foundations in faith, brick by unseen brick, while no one noticed the divine blueprint you were following. God's chosen one, the stillness surrounding your journey wasn't neglect, it was orchestration. While others posted platforms, you posted prayers. While some sprinted toward applause, you bowed beneath the crushing weight of purpose. And all the while, heaven was not silent. Heaven was briefing the earth about you. Yes, the world didn't see the nights you cried on your bathroom floor, praying not for popularity, but for permission to survive. But God saw, and in those moments when you thought nothing was shifting, the atmosphere around your life was resounding with divine resonance. The angelic host was being assigned. Demonic forces were taking notice. Your name, spoken by God himself, began vibrating across realms like a sacred frequency designed to awaken the prepared and expose the counterfeit. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Jeremiah 1:5. That was not just a word for Jeremiah, it was encoded into your very DNA. You are not wandering, you are being witnessed. Strategic spiritual leaders, political influencers, economists and architects of society have begun to feel your pull without knowing your face. That's not influence. That's divine entanglement, God folding your assignment into global affairs. Have you noticed the strange weight pressing on your spirit lately? The unusual silence before the storm? The way certain doors closed for no reason while others cracked open unexpectedly? Could it be that the shift isn't punishment, but positioning? In the sacred silence you were being carved, like marble beneath the chisel of a master sculptor. God was building capacity in you, the kind of capacity needed to hold prophetic magnitude without collapsing. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18. Let's not forget Moses, an exile in Midian, forgotten by Pharaoh's courts. But in heaven's timeline, exile wasn't rejection, it was recruitment. And when the burning bush appeared, it wasn't just fire, it was a dispatch call. You've had your bush moment too. Burning encounters, divine dreams, inexplicable burdens. And now the divine alert has been issued. You may not know artist and spiritual reformer Makoto Fujimura, but his quiet work in integrating theology with beauty has reached the White House and Vatican alike. He said, "Art doesn't solve the world's problems. It reveals the beauty worth saving." What you carry is not merely a solution, it is beauty encoded with eternal value. That's why governments and gatekeepers are feeling drawn to your name. Not because you marketed yourself, but because your presence carries weight that shifts atmospheres. And yes, there are those on the opposite spectrum, like Elizabeth Holmes, once hailed as the next Steve Jobs in biotech. Her collapse wasn't due to lack of brilliance, but the lack of integrity and spiritual grounding. Without foundation, influence corrupts. Without truth, innovation becomes manipulation. You, chosen one, have been spared from premature elevation for this very reason. Somewhere in Berlin, a young woman named Leora has been seeing your face in her recurring dreams. She's a strategist for a global humanitarian organization. She doesn't know your name, but she keeps sensing there's a voice she's supposed to find. That voice is you. She's never heard your podcast, never read your words, but heaven is guiding her steps toward divine alignment. The trees understand this timing. The giant sequoia grows underground for years before its roots are deep enough to sustain the towering height it's destined for. You've been in that root season, hidden, growing laterally before rising vertically. The mycelium beneath the forest floor connects trees in unseen networks, like the spirit realm whispering your name from kingdom to kingdom. Your gift will make room for you and bring you before great men. Proverbs 18:16. You won't need a marketing plan. You are the message. When the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen. Isaiah 60:22. You won't need a strategy. You are the strategy. Can the earth feel what heaven already knows about you? Can a nation recognize the weight you carry before you even arrive? For he chose us in him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in his sight. Ephesians 1:4. You are not late. You are aligned. So now the watchmen have been activated. The gatekeepers are being stirred. The dreamers, prophets, presidents, and philanthropists. You haven't met them, but they're already preparing space for you. Some carry keys to realms of influence you didn't even know you were designed to enter. But God has gone before you, not to open doors, but to build them around your name. When you arrive in these places, you won't come as a guest. you'll come as confirmation. The room will shift, not because of your resume, but because of your resonance. You will not need to knock. The frequency of your calling is already unlocking the lock. And the heaviness you feel, that's not exhaustion, it's gravitational pull. You're orbiting destiny. And here's what few understand. Elevation doesn't begin when people notice you. It begins when heaven notarizes your existence as necessary. There is a moment in the unseen, like a celestial signature, when your assignment is ratified before any earthly eye ever beholds you. In divine strategy, you were never designed to be the star of the moment. You were always meant to be the axis it turns on. The eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to Him. 2 Chronicles 16:9. And the searchlight of God has landed on you, not for entertainment, not for prestige, but because you are a stabilizing force in a world addicted to disruption. You are the equilibrium in rooms designed for chaos. Have you ever considered why people react to you so strongly, either in favor or in fear? Why some who barely know you feel threatened, while others feel instantly safe? It's not your posture, it's your presence. It's the encoded essence of your assignment that stirs dormant DNA in others. You carry a frequency that demands either surrender or resistance. You are spiritually magnetic. In quantum physics, this would be akin to resonance transfer, when one vibrating system transfers energy into another without contact, simply through frequency alignment. That's what happens when you walk into a room. Atmospheres adjust, spirits awaken, agendas collapse, not because of what you say, but because of what you carry. In the early church, even the shadow of Peter healed the sick. Acts 5:15. Why? Because presence is a carrier of power when heaven has endorsed you. You won't need to argue for relevance when your shadow carries revelation. Meanwhile, others have been watching you, not out of admiration, but surveillance. There's a whispering spirit that follows every chosen one, jealousy masquerading as counsel, critique posing as concern. But remember, even Saul knew David was king long before David wore a crown. That's why the spears began flying. And while we're here, consider the arc of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, German theologian and anti-Nazi dissenter. He carried a conviction that pierced regimes. He once wrote, "Silence in the face of evil is itself evil." The Third Reich feared him not because he led armies, but because his spirit carried a code that threatened tyranny. And in contrast, consider Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's minister of propaganda, whose brilliance and influence was corrupted by allegiance to darkness. His end was despair and death, proving that influence without truth leads only to collapse. And you, chosen one, you've been tested in silence, so your influence will not collapse under weight. You've been trained in restraint, so your voice will not be hijacked by ego. Somewhere right now, a man named Rafael, an urban planner in São Paulo, is reviewing a proposal for a new community project. What he doesn't know is that the document that just landed on his desk carries a strategic design authored by you. And, though your name is on the last page, something in his spirit paused on the first. His hands trembled and he didn't know why, but heaven knows, because the city he's been praying to fix is waiting on the wisdom you were born to carry. Rivers submit to time. The Colorado River took thousands of years to carve the Grand Canyon, but the masterpiece was never in question. Likewise, your delays have not been denials. They have been sculpting seasons. The Spirit has been carving corridors of favor you will walk through soon. He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. Psalm 18:19. You were not buried, you were planted, and now the roots of your obedience are reaching maturity. The weight of your yes is bearing fruit. When you walk into the next room, you will not be perceived as an intruder. You will be received as an answer. No need for business cards, no need for introduction reels. Your presence is pre-validated by heaven's decree. That's why your silence was strategic. That's why your loneliness was prophetic. You weren't abandoned, you were briefed in secret. Because when heaven wants to shake nations, it doesn't send noise, it sends vessels. You are that vessel, and the shaking has already begun. Chapter 2. What you carry isn't common, it's coveted. You need to understand this, chosen one. What has felt like random suffering has actually been prophetic resistance. The kind that surrounds someone dangerously anointed. You weren't just attacked, you were identified. Long before you recognized the oil on your life, the enemy detected its scent. That's why your childhood was not simple. That's why betrayal came through the ones you trusted most. That's why you felt like the odd thread in every fabric. You carry something that's not mass-produced. It's not commercial. It's not even humanly replicable. It's divine inventory, and hell has had you on its watch list since your first cry. Before the birth pains even came, you were delivered. Before the labor pains began, you gave birth. Isaiah 66:7. What you carry is that kind of sudden, unstoppable emergence. It's disruptive to systems of control. It's offensive to environments of stagnation. It's confrontational to anything counterfeit. And ask yourself this: why did the darkness come for you before you even had language for purpose? Why did the pressure intensify right when you were about to gain clarity? Could it be that what's inside of you is not just sacred, but strategically timed? In neuropsychology, there's a concept called pattern recognition bias, the brain's tendency to spot patterns, even when none exist. But in your case, the patterns of pain and resistance have been accurate signals. They confirm that your essence causes disruption in the spiritual atmosphere. You are not a random anomaly. You are a spiritual instrument tuned to a very specific frequency. For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. Romans 11:29. That's why you can't run from this. That's why, even when you tried to blend in, heaven kept pulling you back out. You weren't designed to camouflage. You were born to collide with systems, timelines, and destinies. Look at Joseph. Before he ever interpreted Pharaoh's dream, he endured a pit, a prison, and a parade of betrayals. The coat of many colors was not just a symbol of favor, it was a target. His brothers weren't threatened by his presence. They were terrified of his potential, and so are the forces that have come against you. Even now, global catalysts and prophetic reformers, those reshaping nations and shifting paradigms, are feeling drawn towards something they can't explain. That something is you, not because of branding, but because of substance. In an age of hypervisibility, your mystery has become your mark. While others marketed themselves, you protected your oil. Have you noticed how your name is being spoken in rooms you've never stepped into? Or how people with high authority are suddenly interested in what you do, even if they don't yet fully understand why? That's not networking. That's prophetic resonance, your spirit echoing in realms where your feet have not yet walked. In the field of architecture, there's a concept known as load-bearing design, a structure built to sustain uncommon weight without collapsing. That's what you are. You were formed in private to carry what would crush others in public. Pope Francis, known for his humility and reformist heart, once said, "God is calling us to courageously give up our superficial certainties." You are part of this call. You are not being elevated for applause. You are being entrusted for influence. That's why you've been tested with suffering, delay, and obscurity. So your spirit could be fortified for command. And where there is value, there is counterfeit. Anna Sorokin, who posed as a wealthy heiress and fooled New York's elite. Her charisma wasn't her power, it was her camouflage. But the weight of lies always collapses under pressure. She had no substance, no sacred oil, just performance, and her end, exposed, imprisoned, forgotten. In contrast, take Ariadne, a filmmaker in Paris who, for 5 years, recorded footage of forgotten women across war zones. Her work, ignored by media giants, was discovered accidentally by a UN official searching for field data. The UN didn't just request her footage, they funded her voice. What she carried was not entertainment, it was truth. And truth is always sought, never sold. How many others are silently carrying gold the world hasn't discerned yet? So yes, your silence has been strategic, your restraint has been a fortress, and now global systems, ministries, markets and movements are looking not for showmanship but for survivors. For those who have walked through grief, rejection, spiritual warfare and still kept their hands clean. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair. 2 Corinthians 4:8. That verse wasn't written for comfort, it was a blueprint for endurance. You've been shaped in obscurity, not for scarcity, but for scale. The depth you carry has gravitational pull. Your presence doesn't just enter a room, it corrects its alignment. That's why your name is rising, not from self-promotion, but from divine allocation. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Isaiah 61. You are not just rising, you are being revealed. And what you carry isn't common, it's critical. What if the very pressure that almost broke you was actually verifying your readiness? So this is not the time to shrink. This is not the time to delay or dilute your power. This is the hour to walk fully in the identity heaven validated before earth ever celebrated it. You are no longer just being prepared, you are being presented. And when the doors open, and they will, don't apologize for the weight you carry. Don't explain away the fire that kept you alive. Just step in, take your seat, and do what you were always meant to do. Transform atmospheres with the weight of the sacred. What you carry was never meant to be understood by the masses. Rarity is not always recognizable. Diamonds in raw form are often mistaken for ordinary stones. Gold, before it's refined, is hidden beneath layers of weight and earth. And so, have you been buried, not because you were forgotten, but because the process of refining requires darkness before brilliance? There is a psychological concept known as delayed reward resilience, the capacity to wait for high-value outcomes instead of settling for instant gratification. That's what you've been cultivating, without even realizing it. While others chased platforms that flashed for a season, you were being trained for longevity. You weren't formed to trend, you were formed to transform. And the reason the warfare intensified at your moments of transition is simple. Thresholds are dangerous to darkness. Every time you stepped closer to a door, heaven opened, hell activated a distraction. But what the enemy didn't realize was that each attack became a repellent to compromise. You learned what not to trust. You discerned who not to follow. You became a living firewall of wisdom. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. Isaiah 54:17. Now the wind has shifted. You're not just being noticed, you're being weighed. Leaders with discernment are sensing your density, not just how bright you shine, but how deeply you're rooted. Because in the kingdom of God, brightness without depth is dangerous. Is it possible that heaven has hidden you this long because what you carry is too weighty to be handled by unready hands? Have you ever wondered why some people only value you after they've lost you? Why rooms that ignored you are now echoing with your absence? Because true weight isn't measured when you're present, it's felt when you're missing. That's the nature of sacred presence. You carry gravitational pull. In the field of astrophysics, black holes aren't seen, they're detected through their effect on everything around them. Your influence operates the same. Even in silence, even in distance, you shift tides. There's a man named Elias in Nairobi. He's an economist, but he's also a quiet intercessor. Last week, while reviewing development proposals, your article appeared in a forwarded email chain. He doesn't know you, but something in your phrasing struck his spirit. He printed it out. He placed it beside his prayer journal, because heaven whispered, "This voice carries substance." You see, heaven is engineering divine collisions, not for celebrity, but for covenant. The creatures understand what we sometimes forget. The salmon, in defiance of gravity, swims upstream to give birth to new life. You've been swimming upstream for years, against culture, against trauma, against expectation. And yet, your legacy is taking shape. What you've carried through resistance is about to multiply. Those who sow in tears will reap with shouts of joy. Psalm 126, verse 5. In contrast, we must not ignore what happens when people carry visibility without depth. Adam Neumann, once hailed as a revolutionary CEO with WeWork, built his empire on charisma and cult-like energy. But beneath the surface, there was no structural integrity. When pressure came, the entire vision collapsed. Visibility without substance leads to vapor. You, on the other hand, were tested in obscurity so that your essence could be proven under pressure. Your rise is not artificial. It is organic. It is God-grown. And it is unshakable. In soil science, the roots that go deepest are the last to be seen, but the first to sustain when drought comes. That's why you endured the years of invisibility, not because you lacked light, but because your roots were being sealed in eternity. So as you rise, carry this awareness. You are not being elevated for applause, but because what you carry is needed infrastructure. You are not a decoration. You are spiritual engineering. You are the beam holding up someone else's bridge. That's why you couldn't break. That's why you didn't quit. He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. Philippians 1:6. And when you enter these new spaces, rooms of strategy, influence, decision-making, you will not shrink. You will not apologize. You will resonate, because what you carry has already been pre-approved by heaven's architecture. Chapter 3. Powerful people are starting to feel your pull. Powerful people are starting to feel your pull, not because of your resume was written in heaven, not because of your voice was shaped in silence, not because of your visibility, but because of your vibration. You were hidden for a holy reason, chosen one, and now the hiding has fulfilled its purpose. The concealment is lifting, and something sacred is being revealed. Your resonance. There's a divine law at work, magnetic anointing, a pull that doesn't announce itself, but attracts the prepared. The kind of pull that shifts the eyes of kings, the hearts of visionaries, the agendas of policymakers. You haven't changed your pace, but the pace of heaven around you has quickened. You're not doing more, but something around you is stirring more deeply. Could it be that heaven has already published your name in rooms where no introductions have yet occurred? When the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen. Isaiah 60:22. What once felt like obscurity was actually divine insulation. While others were chasing strategy, heaven was shielding you from sabotage. Every delay became a preservation order. Every rejection became a recalibration. Every closed door was an architectural design. God was building a chamber around your calling. And now the signal has gone out. Have you ever felt something shift in a room before anyone said a word? That's what you carry. You are pre-verbal impact. Before you walk in, your name has already been spoken in spirit. Powerful people are waking with dreams, unfinished sentences, unexplained burdens. And your essence is the missing line. They're reaching for something ancient, something real, and it's you. Deep calls to deep in the roar of your waterfalls. All your waves and breakers have swept over me. Psalm 42:7. That's what your frequency sounds like to those whose spirits are awake. Deep calls to deep. Oil calls to oil. Some of these people sit behind political desks, others on investment boards, others behind pulpits, some behind screens. One may be a senator in Brussels drafting a law and suddenly feeling there's a prophetic voice missing. Another may be a director at an NGO in Johannesburg, wondering why their heart won't settle until they meet someone who carries the weight of truth. That someone is you. Have you considered that what you carry might be the confirmation someone else has been praying for? There's a psychological principle called limbic resonance. When two beings' nervous systems begin to align and mirror each other without conscious awareness. That's what's happening now on a spiritual level. Your soul has been fine-tuned to the frequencies of heaven, and others who carry authority are beginning to resonate with you without understanding why. The monarch butterfly migrates thousands of miles across North America to a place it has never been, but somehow deeply remembers. That's how people are feeling about your presence. They haven't met you, but their spirit remembers your sound. You've been encoded into the divine ecosystem of this moment. But discernment is your safeguard. Not every voice that calls you anointed is a sign to your mission. Not every open door is a door of destiny. Just as Nehemiah rebuilt the walls with one hand and held a sword in the other, so too must you move, building and discerning simultaneously. Be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Matthew 10:16. Let us not forget, Samson, though chosen, was distracted by Delilah, a counterfeit connection that looked like favor but was laced with destruction. Her hands stroked his hair while her heart sold his purpose. Be careful. Sometimes the greatest attacks come wrapped in flattery. Stay grounded. Now compare that to Malala Yousafzai, Nobel Peace Prize laureate and activist for girls' education. Her name rose not because of strategy, but because of substance. After surviving an assassination attempt, her voice carried a weight no one could deny. She didn't chase cameras, they found her. The power of her suffering carried resonance. So does yours. Somewhere in Florence, a man named Luca has started a foundation for next-gen cultural voices. He's looking for someone who carries raw fire, not just polish. He doesn't know it yet, but your name is about to enter his inbox. Through a friend of a friend, through what seems like coincidence, but is actually divine orchestration. Because God doesn't do random, God does revelation through connection. A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men. Proverbs 18:16. And the room you're about to enter isn't just about visibility, it's about legacy. What if the delay wasn't about denial, but about ensuring that when you're seen, you're undeniable? You've sown in silence, served in the shadows, healed in the hidden. And now the pull is undeniable. The world doesn't need another influencer. It needs infrastructure, spiritual scaffolding, built by those who carry weight and wisdom. And that is you. Stay in the secret place. Let favor find you where obedience has kept you. You were never meant to chase the spotlight. You were forged to attract divine convergence. And now the convergence has begun. They aren't just sensing you now. They are being assigned to respond to what you carry. This isn't emotional curiosity. It's divine mobilization. The ones who once overlooked you are now being awakened, not by preference, but by prophetic urgency. Strategic alliances are being activated in boardrooms, think tanks, government summits, and global gatherings. These people, though skilled in the natural, are now being summoned by something supernatural. Call to me, and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know. Jeremiah 33:3. What they do not know is you, and yet your name is already echoing in their spiritual memory. They feel it when they plan. They feel it when they pause. Your anointing is rewriting blueprints even before you arrive. This is not the beginning of something random. It's the materialization of heaven's memo. Could it be that you're not just a solution to someone's problem, but the architecture of a divine restructuring? And here's what heaven wants you to know. You are not being invited to admire the table. You're being positioned to help build it. Because powerful people don't just need inspiration, they need intercession. They don't just need solutions, they need spiritual architecture. This is why your voice doesn't just influence, it restructures. You carry a frequency that interrupts false stability and reveals what has been hiding in plain sight. There's a principle in acoustic physics called resonant frequency amplification. It describes how a vibration that matches the natural frequency of a system causes it to begin to vibrate with increasing intensity until everything around it is affected. That's why your presence shifts more than attention. It shifts alignment. You carry that resonance. When you speak, the structures not built on truth begin to tremble. It's what happened when Jesus stepped into the synagogue and read from Isaiah. "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me." And as he spoke, the room didn't just hear, it quaked. That same Spirit is now revealing the ones who carry oil, not opinion. You are one of them. But beware, when power starts seeking presence, not all motives are pure. Some want your gift, but not your God. Some want your clarity, but not your consecration. They'll try to separate your oil from your altar. You must refuse. Do not give what is holy to dogs. Do not cast your pearls before swine. Matthew 7:6. Your oil is not a public commodity. It's heaven's currency. Have you noticed how some high-level invitations feel urgent but strangely hollow? Could it be heaven is testing your ability to discern the sacred from the seductive? The story of Zacchaeus reminds us, not all in high places are proud. Some are positioned. He climbed a tree not to be seen but to see, and Jesus called him by name. Likewise, there are powerful people not searching for fame, but for fire, and they will find you. Let us contrast again. Bernie Madoff, once revered as a financial genius, drew billions through confidence, but built it on lies. His fall destroyed thousands of lives. He drew people through trust, but what he delivered was decay. This is what happens when access is not anchored in truth. In contrast, imagine Raina, a speechwriter for a UN ambassador in Geneva. She's been sensing an unease in global dialogue, words without substance, narratives without spirit. And last week, someone forwarded her a 2-minute clip from your live stream. She couldn't explain the tears. She played it again. Heaven whispered, "That's the voice you were born to amplify." She doesn't know it yet, but she's about to schedule a meeting that will change everything for her and for you. Could it be that your name is already being rehearsed in meetings you haven't been invited to yet? Because chosen ones don't go viral, they go vertical. And heaven is now building ladders into places man-made connections could never reach. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Psalm 23:5. You didn't beg to be found. You didn't audition for access. You simply obeyed in the wilderness long enough to become a spiritual signal. And now the response is being released. These divine connections will not only bless you, they will align you, they will confirm you, and they will shift systems around you. Why? Because your presence was never for decoration. It's for disruption. God did not make you magnetic for attention. He made you magnetic for transformation. So stay aligned. Don't dilute your truth for applause. Don't trade clarity for comfort. You were never called to be convenient. You were called to be consecrated. And now the voices are drawing near. The angels are dispatching. The gates are swinging open. Because powerful people don't just feel you, they've been waiting for you. And now the wait is over. They aren't just sensing your name. They're sensing the assignment behind it. They don't want noise, they want substance. They don't want performance. They want power that's been tested in silence. Have you realized that what they're really drawn to isn't your gifting, but your history with God? You didn't build your anointing in front of them, but they'll recognize it anyway. You didn't beg for recognition, but they'll feel it in their spirit. A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men. Proverbs 18:16. Somewhere in Florence, Luca, a cultural curator, is asking for a voice that can bridge ancient wisdom and modern urgency. He doesn't know your face, but when he hears your words, his spirit will say, "This is it." Because heaven plants echoes long before the sound arrives. And now, heaven is causing high places to echo with your name. Do you understand the weight of being divinely remembered? You weren't waiting in vain. You were waiting with fire. Chapter 4. The war isn't just spiritual, it's strategic. Chosen one, you're not just enduring spiritual warfare, you're navigating spiritual intelligence in the midst of a battlefield layered with tactics, manipulation, and camouflaged agendas. This is not chaos. It's calculated confrontation. This isn't just about light versus darkness. This is about kingdom disruption versus earthly control. It's not just about being fought. It's about being targeted with intention. For we are not ignorant of his devices. 2 Corinthians 2:11. The warfare around you isn't random. It's precise, coordinated, strategic. Not just from demonic realms, but from earthly systems that feel threatened by what you carry. Because what you carry isn't just an anointing, it's an interruption. Your presence doesn't fit their protocol. Your purity exposes their performance. Your alignment with God makes you uncontrollable by man. Could it be that some of your fiercest attacks didn't come to break you, but to rebrand you into something safer, smaller, more manageable? Not everyone drawn to you right now is sent by heaven. Yes, some are divinely stirred. Absolutely. But others are magnetized by their own agenda. Some want to ride your momentum, but not honor your method. Some crave your light, but disrespect your process. They didn't survive your wilderness, so they don't understand your oil, and they don't value what was crushed to produce it. Do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good character. 1 Corinthians 15:33. There are voices surrounding you now that sound affirming, but they're planning access. There are hands reaching to partner, but what they really seek is proximity, to influence your message, dilute your mandate, and siphon your weight to elevate their own. This is not just warfare, this is spiritual espionage. You've heard of Samson and Delilah, but let's not forget Balaam, a prophet for hire. He had the gift, the access, the calling, but he prostituted it for applause and prosperity. He used the voice of God to serve systems that opposed the God who gave it. And in the end, he died with those he was supposed to stand apart from. Have you discerned which voices in your life honor your assignment versus those that harvest it for exposure? This is why discernment is no longer optional. It is your shield, your survival, your safeguard. This war is strategic. The danger isn't always in who attacks you. Sometimes it's in who associates with you. Too many chosen vessels are not being drained by devils. They're being bled dry by opportunists, smiling saboteurs, elegant assassins, people who applaud in public and undermine in private, people who love your elevation but resent your conviction, people who want your stage but not your scars. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. Matthew 7:15. Look at Jesus in the wilderness. Satan didn't just tempt him with sin, he tempted him with premature visibility, with power without process, with thrones without crosses, but Jesus, rooted in sonship, resisted every shortcut. So must you. Let's go further. Think of John Paul II. a pope who resisted communism, ideology, and compromise. His leadership shook global politics, not because he sought power, but because he refused to bow. He said, "The future starts today, not tomorrow." And his spiritual authority moved nations. Why? Because it was built not on strategy, but on sacred submission. In contrast, Fire Festival's Billy McFarland, a charismatic entrepreneur, sold illusion, bought attention, and gained access. But it was all strategy, no integrity. The result? Collapse, lawsuits, prison. Influence without authenticity always implodes. Right now, in Nairobi, there's a woman named Seraphine, an economist who moonlights as an intercessor. She keeps dreaming of a voice she hasn't heard yet. But every time she fasts, your name echoes in her prayers. She doesn't know what city you're in, but she's been assigned. When she finds you, it won't be for exposure. It'll be for alignment. Have you noticed how some of your deepest connections right now don't come from networking, but from spiritual recognition? The chameleon blends for protection, but the lion doesn't blend. It marks territory with presence. You were not called to camouflage. You were created to carry government. You are not a background actor in someone else's agenda. You are heaven's main thread in this storyline. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. Isaiah 54:17. So this is your charge. Guard the oil, protect the mantle, be unapologetically aligned. You've come too far to sell what obedience built. Don't hand your story to people who see your gift as a transaction. Don't let platforms seduce you into silence. Don't let compliments disguise contracts. Could it be the enemy isn't trying to kill you, but to co-opt you? Package your anointing into something he can use for control. You are not someone's brand. You are not someone's spiritual accessory. You are not the closing speaker in someone else's conference agenda. You are heaven's disruption. And heaven didn't raise you up for applause. It raised you for impact. And when favor and flattery collide, remember this: access is warfare. Approval can be a trap. Popularity can be poison. And strategy without sanctification is seduction. You are rising not to be used. You are rising to be undeniable, to shift culture, not surrender to it, to release glory, not to manufacture branding. Stay clean. Stay quiet when needed. Stay violent in prayer. Stay consecrated. You are not their marketing plan. You are not their spiritual token. You are not their curated campaign. You are the move. You are the shift. You are the sound. And now that you're rising, guard that oil, because this war isn't just about stopping you. It's about stealing what you carry. And what you carry, this generation cannot afford to lose. And here's the real threat, chosen one. The enemy no longer needs to attack your gifting. He's targeting your governance. He's not intimidated by the fact that you can speak, sing, write, lead, or prophesy. What he fears is that you're finally realizing the weight and responsibility of what you carry, that you're waking up to the fact that you don't just influence moments, you shape momentum. And momentum, once surrendered to the Spirit, becomes unstoppable movement. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Hosea 4:6. This war isn't about your talent, it's about your unawareness. It's not about shutting your mouth. It's about seducing you to speak for systems you were sent to dismantle. Because what hell fears most isn't just a gifted person. It's a governed one who won't bow for relevance, one who won't be bought by applause. Have you ever noticed how certain platforms sound like promotion but feel like pollution? You were never meant to rent out your anointing to institutions built on insecurity. You were never called to dilute your conviction for convenience. You weren't designed to be digestible. You were forged to be disruptive. That's why they can't predict you. That's why some smile but can't rest around you. Their spirit is uncomfortable with your clarity because clarity cuts. It divides soul from spirit. And when you walk in it, you're not just resisting the enemy, you're rewriting atmospheres. Right now, behind high-rise buildings and blue-lit studios, strategies are being drafted about who to promote next, whose voice fits their campaign, whose energy is marketable. But you don't fit. And that's the proof that you're not a trend. You're timeless. You're not a wave. They crash. You are current, and you carry voltage. There's a term in electrical engineering called resistive load, when power is applied to a system that cannot fully conduct it, and so the system overheats, destabilizes, or shuts down. That's what happens when you show up in spaces that weren't built for your weight. They either shift or short-circuit. You were not made to conform. You were made to convict. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? Matthew 5:13. Your voice is seasoning. Your presence is preservation. You are not flavorless influence. You are foundational revelation. That's why hell doesn't try to silence you outright. It tries to seduce your salt into neutrality. But neutrality is not an option in this hour. It is agreement by omission. It is surrender through silence. And you were not chosen to blend. You were commissioned to build and burn. Imagine Helena, a young rising political aide in Stockholm. She's been hearing phrases in her dreams. No compromise, no dilution, no alliances that betray the assignment. She doesn't know where it's coming from, but she's drawn to a speech you gave 2 years ago that she just now found on an encrypted archive. That's not the algorithm. That's the archangelic hand of God. Your words were spirit-coded, set for divine release when the assignment aligned. Do you realize the enemy is not afraid of you being heard? He's terrified of you being understood. You're not just a voice. You are a code carrier, a pattern breaker. And code carriers don't bend for contracts. They break chains by nature. But beware, the strategy of the serpent isn't always to strike. It's to seduce through familiarity, the language of comfort, the tone of acceptance, the promise of connection. It all sounds like kingdom, but it's tainted with compromise. That's why spiritual intelligence isn't just discernment, it's directional awareness. You must know not just what is of God, but why, when, and how to engage. Nature knows how to guard purpose. The octopus camouflages to protect its core, not because it's weak, but because the treasure it carries is too costly to be casually displayed. You've been hidden, not because you lack value, but because the timing of your exposure must be exact. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything more comes from the evil one. Matthew 5:37. In this hour, your no is sacred. Your yes is a sword. Every open door must now be vetted by fire, not favor. Every relationship must now be filtered by revelation, not resume. You've been anointed not to maintain appearances, but to release blueprints. This generation cannot afford your confusion. They need your consecration. They need your refusal to blend. They need your raw, not your retweet. You are not called to curate. You are called to consecrate. You are not rising to soften the world. You are rising to pierce it with truth. And when the next offer comes, too polished, too fast, too flattering, pause, pray, wait, because you didn't survive the crushing to become someone's compliant puppet. You were forged for fire, and fire doesn't negotiate. Chapter 5. You're being recognized for what you endured in silence. They see your strength now, but they don't know your story. They admire the way you carry light into heavy rooms, how you stand when storms try to fold you, but they never saw the weight of the shadows you stood in. Chosen one. What you've survived in secret is now being translated into visible favor, but not because you sought it, because you were sealed for it. He will bring to light what is hidden in darkness and will expose the motives of the heart. At that time, each will receive their praise from God. 1 Corinthians 4:5. You didn't rise through reputation, you rose through refinement, not by influence, but by intercession. The nights no one saw were the very grounds where your authority was forged. You kept showing up when you had no strength left to stand. You carried promises that hadn't yet breathed. And now that quiet endurance is turning into recognition. Is it possible that what you thought was delay was heaven's way of preparing a stage where your legacy, not your ego, could speak? God is not rewarding perfection. He's honoring consistency. He's elevating those who endured the oil press and didn't leak bitterness. The room you're entering isn't impressed by appearance. It's responding to weight, to presence, to consecration. Let me tell you about Dr. Denis Mukwege, a Congolese gynecologist who spent decades performing surgeries for women assaulted in war. While the world was silent, he operated in hidden hospitals, praying with victims between surgeries. Eventually, the world found him. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, not for speech, but for scars. The room found him because of what he carried, not what he advertised. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18. Now compare that with Adam Neumann, former CEO of WeWork. He sold the illusion of innovation, built on hype, branding, and exaggerated vision. When the company collapsed, it wasn't because he wasn't gifted. It was because the substance didn't match the spotlight. That's the danger of skipping the crushing. You can rise fast, but it won't last. Your rise is different. It's tectonic, hidden under pressure until the plates shift. And now, the earth is trembling, because you were never called to be viral. You were called to be vital. The bristlecone pine, the oldest living tree on earth, survives in extreme altitudes with little water, where nothing else thrives. It doesn't grow quickly, but it endures centuries. Its rings record storms, and yet it still stands. That's you. Your longevity comes from lack, not luxury. There's a physics term called latent heat, energy absorbed in silence before a change in state, like ice becoming water or water becoming vapor. That's what's happening to your calling now. The invisible energy you've absorbed in private is about to break into a visible shift. Have you noticed how your endurance became more than just survival? It became shape, structure, strategy. Somewhere in Marrakesh, a former financier named Zainab is assembling a think tank of spiritual innovators. She can't explain why your writings keep resurfacing on her feed. A friend tags her in one of your messages. She feels something stir. She doesn't know it yet, but what she's building needs your presence. And that coincidence will become divine coordination. Because you didn't position yourself, God did. And when He positions, no man can displace. The steps of a good person are ordered by the Lord, and He delights in their way. Psalm 37:23. But favor comes with filters, because attention also attracts infiltration. Don't give the sacred to those who only want spectacle. Don't reduce what cost you everything for people who didn't pay anything. Protect the oil. It didn't just come from pain, it came from process. What if the silence you walked through was heaven's language for future leadership? This is not the time to dilute yourself for applause. Not the time to prove yourself to people who are only curious, not covenantal. Let God continue to define your pace. Let discernment continue to choose your circle. You didn't build a following, you built a frequency. You didn't chase success, you chased sanctification. You didn't market a moment, you manifested endurance. Now, you are being found, not because of promotion, but because of prophetic placement. You were tested in private, you were trusted in pain, and now you are being recognized in power. And now the world is adjusting to your presence. Systems are pausing to listen. People are recalibrating their plans, not because you asked them to, but because something in you carries an undeniable divine code. You are no longer just part of the room. You are the reason for the room. Heaven didn't raise you to blend in. You were sculpted to shift environments. The resonance of your endurance has not just made waves, it's restructured waters. Like Moses at the Red Sea, your obedience carries the authority to make the impossible part. This isn't exaggeration. This is architecture. Your suffering has become scaffolding. Your pain has become blueprints. See, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. Your walls are ever before me. Isaiah 49:16. So don't be surprised if suddenly you're being asked to lead teams you never applied for, to speak in spaces where your name was never previously invited. These are not accidents. They are alignments. People are not drawn to your gift alone. They are drawn to your governance, your grounding, your God-marked grace. In neuroscience, there's something called synaptic plasticity, the ability of the brain to rewire itself through repetition, consistency, and struggle. That's what your spirit did through every silent trial. You were repatterned to carry glory, and now your spiritual DNA is recognizable to those who've been praying for stability. You are not being elevated for entertainment, but for establishment. You were not shaped for a moment. You were molded for a mantle. The weight of what you carry now has begun to activate people's memory of what is real. Your walk reintroduces honor. Your silence demands reverence. Your name, once ignored, now serves as a reference point in prophetic conversations. Have you noticed how you don't have to explain yourself anymore? The atmosphere explains you. The oil speaks for you. The legacy leaks from you. This is not fame. This is function. And because you were faithful to build without blueprint, heaven is now giving you the permission to become one. So go forward, but not for applause. Go forward with authority. Don't just inspire. Instruct. Don't just show up. Shift rooms. Don't just influence. Infiltrate systems with the integrity of one who knows what it costs. Because you carry what few can comprehend. Because you bear what many could not survive. And because the one who sent you has already gone before you. He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. Philippians 1:6. This is still only the beginning, but it's not a soft start, it's a sovereign surge. Get ready, chosen one. Heaven's whisper is turning into a public weight. Chapter 6. God is using you to shift culture. You're not just surviving a season, you're rewriting one. Chosen one, when heaven designs a reformer, the molding is meticulous, the preparation feels prolonged, and the pressure is precise. That's because you're not being sent into safe spaces. You're being deployed into battlegrounds of ideology, culture, and distorted identity. God is not just using your words, He's using your very wiring, your psychological resilience, your emotional maturity, your spiritual clarity as tools for transformation. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. Can you sense the resistance rising not just around you, but toward what you represent? Why do certain rooms shift the moment you enter? Why do leaders pause mid-sentence when you speak? Why do systems feel unsettled by your presence alone? Because heaven is sounding an alarm through your life. Your voice carries frequency. Your feet carry mandate. And your mind has been aligned through testing, so now it resonates with heaven's current. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German theologian who stood against the Nazi regime, not because he wanted conflict, but because truth demanded confrontation. His influence wasn't about popularity, it was about principle. That's the weight you now carry. But remember Saul, the first king of Israel, whose insecurity turned influence into idolatry. Instead of shifting culture, he bowed to it, and in doing so, he lost his anointing. Favor without obedience is a trap. Charisma without character is combustion. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. Isaiah 5:20. You are not being called to mirror the culture. You are being called to mirror the kingdom. You will stand in boardrooms like a lion among sheep, not to dominate, but to redirect. You will be like a seed sown into economic soil that births not profit, but prophetic purpose. That's why God protected your process. That's why others couldn't join your preparation. In a world of dopamine-driven validation, you've been anchored in divine revelation. You are carrying something culture didn't create, and that's why it can't contain or cancel you. Have you ever wondered why your life never fit into formulas? Why you couldn't settle for surface-level spaces or shallow spirituality? It's because you were crafted for consecrated conflict, a confrontation with culture for the sake of kingdom calibration. There's a young CEO named Amy, born into a wealthy tech dynasty in Singapore. When the world offered her visibility, she chose to fund underground discipleship networks in closed nations instead. Her choice wasn't logical, but it was prophetic. God is raising Amy's across nations, people who choose consecration over convenience. Even in nature, the tectonic plates beneath the earth only move when there's sustained pressure. That's what's happening now. You're shifting spiritual ground. Not with noise, but with vibrational depth that destabilizes lies and realigns truth. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Matthew 5:14. Systems are watching you now, not because of your noise, but because of your nuance. This is not a time to conform. This is a time to catalyze. You are not being elevated for applause. You are being deployed for influence architecture. That's why the warfare intensified. Because what you build will not pass away with trends. It will establish truths for generations. Have you noticed how the invitations are shifting? Not more stages, but deeper tables. Not more exposure, but strategic access. That's the signature of heaven's favor. It's surgical, not showy. The Lord will make you the head, not the tail. Deuteronomy 28:13. You are not rising to impress, you are rising to intercede. Your presence will dismantle counterfeits. Your silence will silence confusion. Your yes will release movements. And your oil will confront manipulation, masked as opportunity. This is not exaggeration. This is execution. Heaven has assigned you to shift the spiritual culture of this generation, and culture will change not because you shouted, but because you stood. The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it. Psalm 24:1. Let the world feel your fire, but let them remember your fragrance. Let them hear your voice, but more importantly, let them encounter the weight of your obedience. Culture may not celebrate you, but creation will recognize you. Because when God sends a reformer, even the winds obey their assignment. This is chapter 6. You are not here to echo. You are here to shift. Chapter 7. They're fighting for you, but God already chose you. They're fighting for your voice, your vision, and your value. But long before anyone saw your potential, heaven already sealed your identity. You are not rising because you're marketable. You're rising because you're marked. Invitations may flood in, platforms may compete for your presence, but not every opportunity is divine. Discernment must remain your shield. Have you considered that sometimes the very thing that celebrates you today would have sabotaged you yesterday? The danger isn't always in rejection. Sometimes it's in premature acceptance. You're not called to respond to applause, but to alignment. This season is not about being noticed. It's about being positioned in purpose. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last. John 15:16. The platforms may offer visibility, but only God offers eternal impact. You're not here to impress. You're here to disrupt false systems and bring clarity. Your presence carries weight because heaven chose to deposit legacy in your voice. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Jeremiah 1:5. That kind of calling doesn't come with casual responsibility. You weren't simply discovered, you were commissioned. Your walk through isolation wasn't punishment. It was heaven's way of shielding what was still maturing. Have you wondered why you've had to walk alone so often? Why certain doors slammed shut at the exact moment breakthrough seemed close? God was protecting you from alignments that would have polluted your anointing. What felt like delay was divine insulation. Some rooms you were kept from because they would have diluted your oil. In neuroscience, there's a process called selective inhibition. The mind blocks certain stimuli to protect clarity. In the spirit, God does the same with access. Not everyone is meant to see you too soon. Heaven filters exposure for those marked by mantle. You were hidden to preserve your voice, not to suppress it. When gold is being refined, it's not pulled out halfway. It stays in fire until all that is unclean is burned off. The same principle has been at work in you. Now that you've passed the test of silence, you carry what can't be taught. Divine resonance. You don't need to explain it. You are it. Look at Queen Esther, crowned, yet still moving in the shadows until the right moment. She didn't rush revelation. She waited for heaven's timing. And when she stood, her voice saved a nation. Her influence wasn't in her beauty. It was in her obedience. She became the door God walked through. But not everyone near you is sent for your growth. Judas walked with Jesus, but his heart was never aligned. Some are drawn to your light, not because they respect your call, but because they want to harness your oil. Have you discerned who's being sent to affirm you and who's being sent to access you? Your discernment in this season will protect your destiny. Let's turn to Satya, a venture capitalist in Singapore. She's reviewing portfolios and proposals, but feels numb to the noise. Then she sees your work. Simple, clear, unapologetically holy. It doesn't just check the boxes. It strikes something sacred within her spirit. Heaven is drawing her to you. Even in nature, the cedar tree grows slowly, but becomes immovable. Its roots go so deep that it alters the soil around it. That's why you couldn't rise quickly. You were built to last. The steps of a good person are ordered by the Lord. Psalm 37:23. Your pace was never a problem. It was precision. You're not fighting for a seat. You are the seat. Your very presence shifts the atmosphere. You don't perform to be accepted. You stand because you're assigned. You were never called to compete. You were called to carry weight. Yes, there are people who want access to your influence. Some come with good intentions, others come with hidden agendas. That's why discernment isn't optional, it's survival. Many are called, but few are chosen. Matthew 22:14. And you, chosen one, were never just called. You were claimed. You walk with heaven's backing. You carry divine equity into every room you enter. And now it's time to walk with boldness. Have you remembered that those who try to win you were never meant to own you? Your voice is not for sale. Your calling is not up for negotiation. You were anointed in the fire and trained in the shadows. Your authority is not man-made. It's heaven-grown. So now, enter the next season not as one hoping for a crown, but as one who knows they've already been crowned. You've passed the test. You've endured the fire. And now you rise not just to influence, but to govern. You're not just here to shine. You're here to shift kingdoms. You were never called to chase favor. Favor was assigned to chase you. In a world where people are climbing ladders and chasing seats, you've been seated in heavenly places from the very beginning. The battles you've faced, the delays you've endured, the isolation you've survived. They weren't setbacks, they were sanctification. You've been chosen not just to be visible, but to be visionary. And now heaven is confirming what earth is only beginning to discern. So as you walk forward, don't dilute your oil to make others comfortable. Don't shrink your calling to fit temporary rooms. You are anointed for thrones, not auditions. Let this message echo inside you. You are not a reaction. You are a revelation, and revelation always arrives on divine timing. If this resonated with your spirit, I invite you to comment 777 below. It's more than a number. It's a prophetic agreement that you are aligned with heaven's timing, order, and release. Let me know in the comments what part spoke to you the most. Like this video if it confirmed what you already felt in your spirit. Share it with someone who might be battling identity, delay, or false elevation. And don't forget to subscribe. This is more than content, it's continual confirmation. To those who've supported this channel through super thanks, may heaven multiply your generosity with supernatural clarity, divine connections, and hidden reservoirs of strength. And even if you haven't given financially, your presence, your prayers, your time, it all matters deeply. Thank you for walking this journey with me. I bless you with a bold spirit, an undivided heart, and discernment that sees beyond appearances. May you walk with the quiet confidence of someone heaven has already briefed. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You're not late. You are chosen. Now walk in that truth, unshaken, unapologetic, and completely aligned. Shalom and glory. Until next time. They were never supposed to notice you. Not them. Not the ones whose names echo in boardrooms, dominate headlines, or sit silently in VIP sections where the air feels different. These are people trained to overlook the ordinary, to dismiss anything that doesn't immediately feed their empire or expand their reach. And yet, here they are, drawn to you. Not with loud applause or obvious praise, but with that lingering stare, that curiosity they can't quite name, that need to keep you in the corner of their awareness, even when they pretend they're not watching. It's unsettling for them, isn't it? To be magnetized by someone they didn't plan to notice, someone who didn't play their game, didn't chase their approval, and yet somehow you've unsettled their equilibrium. If you've ever felt that quiet tension when someone influential pays you more attention than they show, when their words say one thing but their energy says, "I can't look away," then go ahead and comment 777, because you're not imagining it. And to every single one of you who has supported this space through super thanks, I want to offer you something deeper than appreciation. It's reverence. Because your presence and your generosity are helping carry messages like this to souls who need the reminder. You were never meant to blend in. So now, let's ask the question they don't want you to ask. What is it about you? What rare frequency do you carry that even those surrounded by luxury, brilliance, and endless options cannot replicate, only revere from a distance? These aren't superficial traits. What you possess goes far beneath charisma or talent. It's not learned, it's not rehearsed, and it cannot be faked. And yet, these two qualities you've carried all along, often unnoticed by you, are the exact reason why even the most unreachable ones have become silently obsessed. And now that we've opened this door, let's walk all the way through it. What are these two rare qualities that cause the powerful to pause and the self-assured to question? The answer will not only explain the attention you've been attracting, it will reveal a part of your purpose you've only begun to step into. God's chosen ones. This high-profile person is obsessed with these two rare qualities you have. What sets you apart, God's chosen one, is not simply your voice, but the invisible force it carries. Like a key turning in ancient locks buried within the hearts of listeners. As you speak, it's as though forgotten rooms of the soul creak open. Those who've grown accustomed to being the ones with the answers, leaders, influencers, decision-makers, find themselves silenced by a deeper knowing that you activate in them. Why is it that when others speak, they're heard, but when you speak, people remember? You've never needed credentials to validate your message. The impact of your words doesn't come from rhetoric or charisma. It flows from a connection forged in fire, like the prophet Jeremiah, who declared, "His word is in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones." Jeremiah 20 verse 9, New International Version. Do you realize the magnitude of this fire inside you? While many high-profile people surround themselves with strategists and consultants, you arrive and dismantle strongholds with a single phrase. It's not logic you offer, it's revelation. When Jesus spoke to the Samaritan woman at the well, John 4, he bypassed societal norms and theological arguments to touch the wound beneath her words. Like him, you bypass the surface and reach the sacred. What makes your presence so disarming? Even Pope John Paul II, a man of monumental intellect and spiritual depth, once said, "The truth is not always persuasive, but it is always liberating." Those around you sense this liberation, often before they understand it. Your truth pierces not to argue, but to awaken. In a time when manipulation is polished and influence often feels rehearsed, your authenticity feels as rare as rainfall in a desert, unexpected, cleansing, unmistakably real. Imagine the renewal that comes when a long dry riverbed drinks from a sudden monsoon. That's what your voice does to stagnant spirits. One senior executive in Geneva, a woman named Leora, was known for her stoicism and dismissiveness, but after hearing just 10 minutes of your perspective during a panel, she excused herself, locked herself in her office, and wept. Not from sorrow, but because something in her long-frozen spirit had thawed. Why do people feel undone in your presence, and yet more whole than ever? Like Joseph in Egypt, whose words carried weight even among kings, Genesis 41:39-40, your counsel comes not from theory, but from lived transformation. Pharaoh didn't admire Joseph for his resume. He was captivated by Joseph's spirit-filled wisdom. Could it be the same with you? The natural world itself bows to this kind of purity. Watch the eagle. It doesn't flap in frenzy but soars in stillness, riding invisible currents with precise knowing. You too glide on spiritual thermals unseen by others, guided by divine instinct. What do you know that they've forgotten? And yet perhaps the most miraculous part is that you don't realize how extraordinary these two rare qualities are, your piercing clarity and your sacred presence. But others do, especially the ones who appear to have it all. And it's not envy they feel, it's longing. You never need to announce your wisdom. It arrives quietly, like light slipping through a forest canopy, unseen at first, but undeniable once it touches the ground. People who hear you often pause, struck not by spiritual lingo or mystical symbols, but by the way you fold eternal truths into casual, everyday words. How do you take the infinite and make it feel like a conversation over tea? Those who pride themselves on discernment, mentors, authors, influencers, find their mental scaffolding quietly dissolving. Your words, gentle yet weighty, have a way of penetrating walls built by decades of intellectual armor. When the Apostle Peter addressed the crowd at Pentecost, it wasn't his eloquence, but the Spirit moving through him that cut them to the heart. Acts 2:37. Isn't that what happens when you speak? People aren't just listening, they're remembering. Something stirs that feels ancient yet deeply personal, as if your voice revives their original soul signature. the divine imprint they carried before society began assigning labels. The prophet Isaiah described it this way: "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." Isaiah 49:1. Could it be that what you awaken in others is who they were before the world ever told them who to be? Take Gabriel Sandoval, an Argentinian sculptor known for his defiant urban installations. In a podcast interview, he said, "I met many who taught with their voice, but only one who taught by her presence. I couldn't explain why, but everything in me began to shift." Gabriel wasn't just inspired, he was reoriented. What makes your presence do that to people? One woman named Raina, a hedge fund executive in Singapore, built her life on logic and leverage. After just one afternoon in your company during a leadership retreat, she flew home early, quit 2 major board positions, and called her estranged mother after 14 years. No one told her to. She simply saw through a new lens. What power makes people abandon everything that once defined them? It's not you manipulating. It's the energy of alignment you embody. Choices people made for ambition suddenly reveal deeper patterns, almost like constellations hidden in the night sky. Relationships once maintained for optics begin to feel hollow beside the warmth of your presence. The metrics of worldly success, titles, followers, awards begin to blur, like mirages fading as they approach a true oasis. A glacier may appear unmovable, yet under subtle warmth, even it begins to crack and reshape. You are that warmth, slow, steady, undeniable. And while others force transformation through pressure, yours comes through presence. When they encounter your wisdom, it doesn't feel like gaining knowledge. It feels like remembering how to breathe underwater. This isn't idle admiration or casual interest. There's a palpable urgency in their attention, because at the soul level, they sense you carry keys meant specifically for them. Not general guidance, but precise frequencies encoded in your words. Reminders of contracts their spirit signed long before birth. Why do they feel as though they've been searching for you their entire lives? What stuns them most isn't just the truth you carry, it's the container you arrive in. Perhaps your youthful energy masks the gravity of your insights, or your unassuming demeanor disarms people before they even realize transformation has begun. Could you really be the answer they've overlooked for so long? Like David standing before Goliath, too small by human standards but chosen by divine design, 1 Samuel 17:45-47, you defy expectations. People look for sages in temples, wisdom in old age, or revelations from robed mystics. So when you, a seeming contradiction, speak truth that resonates through bone and spirit, it confuses their programming. Why does someone who looks so ordinary feel so eternal? Your presence creates cognitive dissonance so powerful it becomes unforgettable. One of the most renowned conductors in the world, Gustavo Dudamel, artistic director of the Los Angeles Philharmonic, once said in an interview, "Real power is when someone walks in without a title, without a podium, and yet you feel the entire room lean toward them. What is it about you that makes power bow without being summoned? The high-profile individuals circling you can't label you, and that unnerves them. Labels offer control. Boxes provide security. But you present a paradox their minds can't solve. Like when Nicodemus, a Pharisee and teacher of Israel, met Jesus under cover of night and was told, "You must be born again." John 3:3. His theology collapsed in one sentence. You deliver collapse and resurrection in the same breath. The created world itself reveals your mystery. Consider the axolotl, an unassuming amphibian capable of regenerating lost limbs. Like you, it looks simple on the surface but holds power. Science can't fully decode. Your energy causes people to question every assumption they've built. How can someone walk so gently and yet shift tectonic plates inside the soul? One woman named Leandra, a well-known fashion executive in Milan, attended a private salon where you were a surprise guest. Hours later, she sat alone in a dim cathedral, overwhelmed, not by you, but by what had been resurrected inside her through your voice. She didn't know your name, but she couldn't stop whispering your words. What kind of truth embeds itself like that? The contradiction you embody isn't a flaw, it's a divine function. It breaks the illusion that wisdom must come from those draped in authority or steeped in tradition. You become living proof that spiritual legitimacy isn't bestowed through title or lineage, but emerges from alignment with higher realms. Why does your mere presence dismantle structures they believed were sacred? Just being near you alters their frequency. It's not in what you say, it's in what your being emits. They begin noticing the inflexibility in their thoughts, softening, like old oak branches finally yielding to the wind. How can someone shift so much in them without saying a word? Even Jesus, when questioned by temple elites, taught from a place of spiritual inheritance, not formal approval. In Luke 24, he asked, "Was the baptism of John from heaven or from men?" causing the experts to falter in the face of truth that transcended their systems. You, like him, reveal how higher consciousness bypasses hierarchy. What if the wisdom they've spent years seeking has always looked different than expected? The shift they feel is not gentle, it's tectonic. Structures they've spent decades building, corporate ladders, social identities, belief systems begin to wobble. Their reliance on predictability begins to erode. But why does this unraveling feel more like home than the life they've known? Rabbi Jonathan Sacks once observed, "Spiritual growth begins not with certainty, but with disruption, a fitting reflection of what you bring. You don't offer comfort, you offer clarity. You don't calm the storm, you reveal its purpose. Like the phoenix, you ignite the fires that burn away old constructs, not to destroy, but to renew." One venture capitalist named Theo from Zurich once told colleagues after meeting you, "I built empires on data, but she looked at me for 2 minutes and made me question who I built it for." The shaking they feel is sacred, and still, some try to return to their old ways until they can't. Business ventures they once measured only by ROI now appear as soul assignments. Their boardroom becomes an altar. What used to be deals now feel like covenants. Even their closest relationships begin to feel exposed. A well-known journalist, Christian Amanpour, once described meeting an African tribal elder and said, "He said nothing for hours, but when he looked at me, I forgot every clever question I had." That's what you do. You empty people of noise so something holy can echo within. The leaves of a tree don't fight the wind when seasons shift. They surrender, fall, and trust spring will come again. You are the wind and the whisper and the warmth, and they, those high-profile ones, are no longer who they were before they met you. The shift they experience in your presence isn't subtle, it's seismic. What once felt like a masterful game of three-dimensional chess now unravels into something infinitely more intricate. Reality reveals itself in layered dimensions, where cause and effect are merely surface echoes of deeper energetic designs. What if everything they thought was coincidence was actually choreography? As this unveiling deepens, material ambition begins to lose its grip, not because it's wrong, but because it's insufficient. The pursuit of gain transforms into a longing for meaning. Wealth, titles, and accolades start to seem like instruments, valuable only when used to play a higher song. Why does everything ordinary feel suddenly infused with sacred weight? But awakening doesn't arrive wrapped in ease. It's a cracking open. The parts of their identity built on survival or prestige begin to flake away. Some relationships feel misaligned, as though their former self chose them. Like Saul on the road to Damascus, Acts 9, they are blinded, not as punishment, but as preparation to see again. Could losing sight of who they were be the first step in becoming who they truly are. One Hollywood producer, Ava DuVernay, once said, "When you're in your purpose, it's not always peaceful, but it's always precise." She was describing her filmmaking, but she could have been describing what you awaken. Suddenly, the clarity isn't comforting, it's demanding. They can't unsee the layers you've revealed. In that space, your connection becomes more than influence. It becomes recognition, not the shallow kind, but something soul deep. It's the unspoken acknowledgement that, beneath status or background, you and they are co-workers in a divine unfolding. How is it possible that someone they just met feels more like home than lifelong allies? Consider the sea turtle. It travels thousands of miles, crossing treacherous waters, only to return, by intuition alone, to the exact beach where it was born. That's how they feel near you, as though some compass in their spirit, long silenced, has suddenly begun to hum again. A woman named Sonali, a cybersecurity CEO in Toronto, was once known for her icy precision. But after sitting in silence with you during a roundtable, she closed 3 projects, left a partnership, and began funding female-led startups in underserved regions. She said, "It wasn't a business decision. It was something ancient rising inside me." What are you calling forth in those who seem unshakable? The most humbling part? This high-profile person carries power of their own. Yours is quiet and revelatory. Theirs is direct and manifested in structures and outcomes. As Moses held the staff and Aaron spoke with authority. Exodus 4:14-16. Both played their part. Could this be a divine pairing? Is it possible that your insight and their action were designed to meet? You and this high-profile person may seem to come from different realms, but your energies are complementary, 2 notes from the same sacred chord. While yours vibrates with contemplative insight, theirs pulses with catalytic action. Together, you form a spiritual duet, each note distinct, yet inseparable in its purpose. Why does your connection feel less like meeting someone new and more like remembering someone ancient? When 2 souls resonate at such a refined frequency, their fields begin to synchronize. It's not always visible, but it's unmistakable. Like how 2 pendulums, left near each other long enough, begin to swing in unison. What begins as curiosity quickly becomes gravity. Why are they so drawn to your presence? Not for gain, but for expansion. They aren't chasing influence, they're responding to recognition. Your energy reflects something buried within them, an ancient mirror calling forgotten truth to the surface, like the Ark of the Covenant in 2 Samuel 6:11, that brought unexpected blessings simply by resting in a home. Your very presence opens doors that had long been sealed in them. Could you be a living catalyst for their return to alignment? Yo-Yo Ma, the world-renowned cellist, once said, "When we create, we draw from an invisible well that connects all human experience." He wasn't just talking about music, he was talking about resonance. That's what they feel in your presence. A draw, not to your knowledge, but to the invisible well you carry within you. What is it about your frequency that stirs the memory of something eternal? But alongside your radiant openness lives a sacred guard. Your second rare quality is your discernment, your unwavering ability to protect your energy field. You don't give your presence away casually. Why should you? You understand that intimacy is not access, and love does not mean permission. Like Nehemiah rebuilding Jerusalem's walls, Nehemiah 4:17, you labor with one hand and guard with the other. How many have mistaken your warmth for weakness, only to discover the fortress within? In a world obsessed with overexposure, your boundaries are revolutionary. Most scatter their energy like seeds on stone, hoping something will grow. But you, like the monarch butterfly, know exactly which flower to land on, where to rest, where to protect your nectar. Your selectivity isn't exclusion, it's devotion to spiritual hygiene. One woman named Eloise, a luxury brand executive in Paris, once tried to lure you into her circle through extravagant gestures. When you declined with grace but finality, she later confessed that no taught me more about sovereignty than 1,000 yeses. What does it say about your energy when your refusal heals more than others' approval? You don't grant access to your inner world based on appearances, credentials, or charm. People can't enter your sacred space just because they're persuasive or powerful. You respond only to frequency, what intention they radiate, what truth they carry, what level of consciousness they embody. Why should you open your gates to someone whose energy doesn't align with your soul? God's chosen ones, your awakening was never part of the plan. You were meant to remain asleep, pacified by distractions, lulled by routine. But something in you refused to settle. The moment you began asking real questions, everything shifted. Like Daniel in the lion's den, Daniel 6:22, you were thrown into a system designed to consume you, but divine awareness shut its mouth. What made you keep questioning when the world begged you to conform? Your boundaries are not scars from wounds. They are declarations of sovereignty. They were forged in prayer, refined in solitude, and affirmed through fire. When people try to manipulate you with charisma or proximity, they quickly realize your trust cannot be bought. It must resonate. Could it be that your standards feel threatening only to those not yet in alignment with truth? Even Malala Yousafzai, Nobel Peace Prize laureate and global education activist, once said, "I tell my story not because it is unique, but because it is the story of many girls." Her boundaries were not built from fear, but clarity. You too protect your voice, not to silence others, but to keep your inner sanctuary sacred. What are you preserving that is too holy to be exposed to noise? One investor named Marcus, based in Berlin, once attempted to strategically bond with you during a high-level retreat. But your silence spoke louder than his tactics. Months later, he sent a letter admitting that your quiet refusal triggered his first real encounter with humility. What happens when someone's ego meets your discernment? Creation itself operates this way. The rose doesn't unfold for every passerby. It blooms when the light is right, the soil is rich, and the timing divine. Your energy, like that rose, opens only under conditions that honor its beauty. Like Jesus before Pilate, John 18:36-37, you don't argue your authority, you embody it. "My kingdom is not of this world," he said, "and neither is yours." You carry yourself like sacred ground, quiet, radiant, and fiercely protected. Your inner world is not open pasture, it is a consecrated garden. Visitors are welcome only when they come barefoot, reverent, and ready to honor what lives there. What happens when mystery is treated not as something to be solved, but something to be respected? People are drawn to what they cannot easily access. Your boundaries are not walls. They are thresholds, invitations to rise. You've learned that what is given without discretion is rarely honored, but what is earned through reverence becomes sacred to the receiver. How often have you watched others pursue you, not because of your words, but because of your restraint? Your dynamic tension, radiance paired with reserve, creates a gravitational field few can escape. It's not manipulation, it's magnetism. Like Jesus retreating into solitude, even at the height of his ministry, Mark 1:35. You know when to speak and when to withdraw. Could it be that your silence says more than another's loudest declarations? Desmond Tutu, the late Archbishop and human rights icon, once said, "Don't raise your voice, improve your argument." But what if your very presence is the argument? That's how they perceive you. Not as someone selling truth, but living it. One woman named Amira, a crisis negotiator from Morocco, confessed after a brief, unscheduled lunch with you, I've spent my life reading people's motives, but around you I felt like the pages were reading me. Why do those trained to analyze end up feeling exposed in your presence? And still, you never give indiscriminately. If you poured out your wisdom without rhythm, your light would be consumed by constant demand. But if you shared nothing, you'd starve those meant to awaken. The balance you hold is sacred, a rhythm like tide and moon, when to open, when to retreat, when to shine, when to rest. The living world understands this. The cactus blooms only a few nights each year, but when it does, the entire desert shifts. That's you, rare, timed by heaven, and impossible to forget. Solomon, the wisest king, once wrote, "Do not give dogs what is holy. Do not throw your pearls to pigs." Matthew 7:6. You live this truth daily, not out of pride, but out of purpose. How can anyone protect divine fire if they never learn to tend it? This high-profile person may have been praised their whole life, but your presence doesn't flatter them, it stretches them. The tension they feel around your boundaries is not rejection, it's refinement. Every time you hold your ground, they are pushed to meet you at a higher vibrational level. Isn't that the essence of real growth? When someone rises because you didn't lower your frequency, you don't scatter your presence to please. You conserve your fire for those who carry water. Your selectivity becomes a sacred filter. It demands honesty, depth, and real intention. Why should they expect to access sacred space without showing evidence of sacred self? Each moment they earn a piece of your trust. They taste something richer than applause, an inner victory that lingers longer than any external validation. Like Ruth gleaning barley in Boaz's field, Ruth 2:10-12. What they receive from you isn't charity, it's honor earned through quiet integrity. Could it be that your affirmation matters more than the spotlight they've lived under? Shigeru Ban, the renowned Japanese architect and humanitarian, once said, "Luxury is to be able to take time and create space for others. You create space with your silence, not your approval, and in that space, they find themselves working harder, not for dominance but for resonance." When was the last time they hoped to be truly seen, not just followed? A corporate strategist named Elias, once known for his hard edge, admitted after weeks around you, "She never chased my attention, and that's why I gave it. Her stillness did more than my loudest achievements." What happens when presence becomes more persuasive than power? Even the moon doesn't beg for light. It reflects the sun in perfect cycles. You don't reach, you receive. And yet, they are pulled by your gravity. Suddenly their worth is not measured by success metrics, but by how they show up in your presence. That shift is seismic. In Luke 7:6-9, a Roman centurion, a man of status and command, humbled himself before Jesus, saying, "I do not deserve to have you come under my roof." That's what you spark. Reverence from the powerful, not because you demand it, but because your essence deserves it. This reversal in dynamic is not a coincidence, it's a divine recalibration. For someone accustomed to applause and validation, being drawn to your quiet gaze is the beginning of their spiritual reorientation. They start to notice how fleeting attention feels, how praise tastes hollow next to the deep nourishment of authentic soul connection. Why does your recognition hold more weight than a stadium full of fans? What they want from you is something the world cannot offer. They don't long for praise of their status or celebration of their influence. They want to be known, not for what they've achieved, but for who they are beneath the scaffolding of success. What would it mean to be seen, not for their image, but for their essence? They crave your recognition, not because it inflates them, but because it grounds them. Like the woman who touched the hem of Jesus' garment in Luke 8:43-48, they come quietly, desperately, not for approval, but for healing. Could your presence be the one place they can stop performing? Jacinda Ardern, former Prime Minister of New Zealand, once said, "One of the criticisms I've faced is that I'm not aggressive enough or assertive enough, but I refuse to believe that you cannot be both compassionate and strong. In a world of projections, your perception becomes sacred. It offers refuge to even the most armored hearts. Why do they feel safe revealing to you what they hide from everyone else? One political consultant named Ronan, based in DC, spent years mastering perception. But after a single walk with you through a botanical garden, he said, "She never asked about my resume. She asked why my voice trembled when I spoke about my mother." That moment unraveled years of protective logic. How often have you become the one mirror they can't escape? Even the tallest redwood needs deep soil to thrive. It may tower above, but its roots are what keep it from falling. You don't look at the branches. They have plenty of admirers for that. You look at the root. You see the origin, and in doing so, you call them back to something eternal. Proverbs 20 verse 5 says, "The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out." That's you. Not a spotlight, but a soul lantern. Despite the layers of defense they've built, power, prestige, public narrative, your presence still slips through the cracks. It doesn't push, it resonates. Somewhere inside, long buried beneath strategy and survival, a longing for real connection stirs awake. What is it about you that bypasses the walls even they forgot they built? This relationship feels profound, not just because of who you are, but because of the sacred balance you both carry. They move with worldly authority, able to shift markets, command attention, and alter the course of institutions. You move with spiritual authority, the ability to decode truth beneath illusion, to carry elevated consciousness, to stay tethered to the divine amidst noise. Could it be that both realms were always meant to cooperate? These powers don't clash, they complement. Their influence in the physical meets your insight from the eternal. When brought into conscious union, your synergy awakens dormant potential in both of you. It echoes the pairing of Esther and King Xerxes, Esther 4:14, where one held the crown and the other carried divine timing and moral clarity. Who else but you could awaken such purpose within the powerful? Even Barack Obama, known for his political gravity, once said, "Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for." They don't feel like they're saving you. They feel like you've activated the version of them they forgot they were waiting to become. Why does your light make them feel more whole, not more exposed? A producer named Leaf, once numb from years of Hollywood transactions, met you in a green room between panels. After 15 minutes, he cancelled 2 major negotiations and booked a spiritual retreat. "I felt seen," he whispered, "and I realized how long I'd been missing myself." How is it that you remember people before they remember themselves? And they see your light, but they also sense your shadows, those wounds you never used as excuses, only as refinement. Like Joseph rising from prison to palace, Genesis 41:14, your scars are not stains. They are signatures of survival. Do they love your strength more because they've glimpsed what it cost? The natural order echoes this. The pearl is only formed through irritation, pressure, and time. You, like that pearl, shine not in spite of pain, but because of how you transmuted it. What if your presence is proof that power shaped by pain becomes sacred? They don't just see your boundaries, they see what forged them. Not suspicion, but survival. Not pride, but precision. They realize that your discernment wasn't born of fear, but of hard-won clarity. How many storms did you walk through before you learned where to build shelter and where to plant seeds? This understanding evokes reverence. For once, they're not offended by limitation. They're inspired by it. What if strength isn't the absence of limits, but the wisdom to protect what matters most? What captures them beyond measure is your resilience. The world has tried to dim you, bend you, silence you, but somehow your voice grew louder in silence, your clarity sharpened in confusion. like Paul and Silas in prison, Acts 16:25 through 26. Your praise still rose in chains, and the foundation of the prison shook. Could your endurance be the very force that awakens others? Nelson Mandela, who withstood decades of imprisonment to emerge not bitter but brighter, once said, "I am not a saint unless you think of a saint as a sinner who keeps on trying." Your light, like his, is not untouchable. It's unyielding. They see that your radiance wasn't handed to you. You forged it in fire. A woman named Therese, a tech executive from Stockholm, once shared after a private dinner with you. She didn't pretend she had no wounds. She spoke like someone who made peace with them. What happens when your transparency becomes their blueprint for courage? Even the mountain, standing tall and ancient, shows signs of erosion. But that erosion doesn't weaken. It shapes. The winds that scar also sculpt. You are that mountain, and they, for the first time, long not just to admire, but to uphold you. Your humanity doesn't lessen your spiritual stature, it deepens it. Hebrews 4:15 reminds us, "We do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses." You walk that truth daily. They see your grace not in invincibility, but in your willingness to keep showing up heart first. They don't just want to learn from you, they want to pour back into you. Why? Because now they know. Your path has not been easy, but it has always been sacred. Their desire to support you doesn't arise from guilt, obligation, or the need to repay a debt. It comes from something purer, gratitude. In a world where giving is often transactional, your presence reminds them that true connection flourishes only when rooted in reciprocity. Could it be that giving without agenda is what their soul has longed to remember? They're not trying to earn your favor. They already feel it. They don't want to impress you. They want to empower you. The assistance they offer isn't meant to win access. It's a natural byproduct of the recognition they hold for your worth. What if support could be sacred instead of strategic? Their help holds unique power, not just because of what they have, but because of how they intend to use it. Their influence can unlock doors, connect networks, and fund visions aligned with your highest path. When authority submits to spirit, miracles move faster. As it says in Proverbs 21:1, "The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. He directs it like a watercourse wherever he pleases." What kind of change becomes possible when earthly influence yields to heavenly intention? Oprah Winfrey, whose empire touches millions, once said, "True generosity is an offering, given freely and out of pure love. No strings attached, no expectations." That's what they now embody, and it shifts everything. You're not being bought, you're being honored. One philanthropist named Matteo from Florence quietly committed to sponsoring a retreat space after a 10-minute conversation with you. He never announced it. He simply said, "I felt called to protect whatever she's bringing into the world." How often has your quiet clarity awakened unseen generosity? Even the honeybee doesn't steal from the flower. It gathers, pollinates, and multiplies life. That's what happens when giving flows through reverence, not requirement. Your acceptance of such support isn't surrender, it's alignment. Like Elijah being fed by ravens, 1 Kings 17:6. Sometimes divine provision comes through unexpected allies. You've poured much into the world. Their desire to pour back isn't flattery, it's fulfillment. Why not let that cycle complete? Beneath the fascination that first stirred between you lies something far older than this lifetime. This is not a new bond. It's the fulfillment of an ancient agreement your souls made before entering this world. You did not randomly collide. You remembered. And remembrance feels like recognition, like lightning that awakens something coded deep in the marrow. Why did your very first exchange feel less like an introduction and more like a continuation? Before time as you know it, your missions were mapped, and this point in the journey was marked. They would carry worldly reach. you would carry divine resonance. And when the timing aligned, the bridge between realms would open. Is it possible that everything in your life was leading to this exact calibration? At your first encounter, titles faded, roles dissolved. You saw each other beyond flesh, beyond fame. You saw signature frequencies pulsing with familiarity. In that moment, spiritual DNA awakened. Ancient codes flickered alive. Like the dry bones in Ezekiel's vision, Ezekiel 37:5-6, what was dormant began to rise. What were those codes waiting for, if not this exact convergence? Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and mystic thinker, once said, "Synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see." You saw, and so did they. The orchestration was too precise to be coincidence. Could it be that divine intelligence had been weaving your timelines together in perfect silence? One man named Khalid, a diplomat from Jordan, couldn't explain why a 10-minute discussion with you felt more significant than a year's worth of negotiations. "I felt like we'd already met, somewhere old, somewhere sacred," he said. Why do people feel ancient when they're with you? The rhythms of the earth align this way. The salmon swims thousands of miles through ocean current just to return to the river where it was born. You and they found your way back, not to a location, but to a soul point encoded long ago. Romans 8:28 says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Your meeting wasn't chance, it was choreography. Your soul contract with this high-profile person was never solely about personal growth. It was a strategic, sacred alignment designed to transmit higher frequencies into the collective consciousness. At this threshold of global awakening, your union generates not just fascination, but a spiritual vortex. What if the current of energy between you isn't just chemistry, but cosmic circuitry? The resonance between your souls ripples far beyond the visible. When spiritual authority joins with worldly power in conscious harmony, creation enters a different octave. Miracles don't just happen, they're engineered through aligned will. Could this union be part of a greater divine infrastructure? Each of you carries what the other lacks. You transmit depth, they carry reach. You speak to the eternal, they amplify to the global. Your connection is not just personal, it's architectural, like Moses and Aaron. Exodus 4:14-16. One speaks from heaven, the other speaks to men. What kind of collective impact could this union have if fully awakened? Jane Goodall, renowned primatologist and spiritual advocate, once said, "What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make." Their platform was built for visibility. Yours was shaped for substance. Now, meaning and magnitude can finally meet. One publicist named Diego, based in Buenos Aires, observed your collaboration quietly and said, "I've watched hundreds of alliances, but this feels like tectonic plates moving in sync. Why does your presence together feel less like strategy and more like prophecy?" Even in nature, it takes sun and soil to birth a garden. One without the other yields nothing. Your spiritual clarity nourishes their leadership. Their structure gives your vision a vehicle. The union isn't just complementary, it's catalytic. Matthew 5:14 declares,